Hello and welcome to Check by Support Act. Thanks for joining us. This is episode 3. We hope you're all doing well in isolation right now, keeping up your social distancing practices. The whole point of this daily webcast is to keep you informed about what's going on in the music world and with the crisis more broadly, but also to discuss your well-being, particularly around your mental health. And at this point, I want to encourage people to contact our wellbeing helpline if they're experiencing any problems with their mental health at this problem, which can be reached at 1-800-959-500. Today, I'm joined by Tom Harris from White Sky. Thanks for joining me, Tom.
Hey, Luke. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, cool. So it feels like we're on live television right now, but we're pre-recording this and we're going to put it up a little bit later on this afternoon. We thought it'd be good to have Tom on to have a discussion about what's just happened overnight with the JobKeeper announcement, which nobody really knows what's going on just yet. Hopefully Tom has a little bit more insight for us, but also what's brought us to this point with the job seeker allowance and Centrelink payments in general. So firstly, maybe Tom, you want to tell us a little bit about White Sky?
Sure. Okay, so White Sky is a music accounting firm. We work predominantly with touring artists, their managers, record labels, and other music businesses. We handle the day-to-day accounts as well as tax and royalty expertise and royalty accounting and royalty reviews. Anything music and finance related, basically.
So you're keeping quite busy at the moment?
Yeah, it's been a bit chaotic the last few weeks, but I think everyone in every role, whether you're a school teacher or a medical practitioner or anyone, everyone's lives have been turned upside down. So yeah, but we're trying to focus on our area, which is these stimulus packages that are coming out from the federal and state governments, and trying to make sense of it, which is not easy because it's all very much made up on the fly, and still waiting for more and more information to come. But I think we can talk about, like I said, we can talk about the announcement yesterday and what that means for the music industry and individuals.
Yeah. So, I mean, broadly, when you heard the announcement about the government's JobKeeper subsidy they announced yesterday, which we'll probably explain in a little bit more detail yesterday, what was your first thought when you heard that announcement?
I thought this is fantastic. This is great. This is what it's similar to what they're doing in other countries like the UK, and I think that this is what some other parties had been calling for early on, and I'm glad that the government have decided to go ahead with this measure. The big difference that this new way, what they're calling JobKeeper, is different to what was happening previously, was that, and what the stimulus that they were offering stimulus to people who were unemployed, or people who had recently found themselves unemployed, bonus payments and double unemployment benefits, etc., which meant that there was an enormous amount of people becoming unemployed going to Centrelink. What they're doing now is essentially rather than giving the money to Centrelink to pay all the all these newly unemployed people, they're giving the money to the employers and saying, you pay this to your staff, rather than firing them, rather than making them redundant. And why that's a good thing is because it keeps the relationship between the employer and the employee intact. It means there's a little bit more money. It's $1,500 a week instead of whatever it was, $1,200 or something, or $1,100 a week. But it also means that the employer can top up the wage of the employee. So if someone was on a higher wage, and then they get the $1,500 a fortnight paid to the business, which then gets on paid to the staff member, and then the business can top up their wage so that the employee is still getting the same amount of money, or close to the same amount of money as they were before. They can cover their living expenses, etc. And equally as importantly, the business can continue to operate and continue to be a business.
Yeah, so I mean, I think one of the things we've heard so far in our discussions at Support Act is exactly what a business is. I think a lot of people get confused about what a business is when they're sole traders or freelancers. Yep. So a business would include sole traders, would it not, Tom?
So sole traders have been included in this as well as a business and an employee of their own business, so to speak. So if you're a sole trader, you need to register as like an employer. So you don't get paid via the person who is paying you. So if you're a crew member and you're a sound engineer and you tour with a band, because you're a sole trader, you don't qualify to be paid through the band. Instead, you register yourself, and then the money gets paid to you directly. And the eligibility for this is that you just need to be able to show that your income has dropped by 30% or more, this month compared to the same month last year. That stuff is still a little bit unclear, and I realise particularly for bands who tour, seasonally, their income is not consistent month to month. It doesn't really make sense. So that sort of thing might make sense for a cafe that, or a restaurant that turned over X amount in March last year, and then half as much in March this year. So 30% drop means that they're eligible. In the music industry, it's a little bit more complicated than that, but there's a lot more detail on how to measure eligibility that is expected to come out when this is formally announced, probably later this week or over the weekend, I think.
Okay, great. So if people are looking at the job seeker allowance, which was announced last week, which is the Centrelink payment, and looking at job keeper, I guess we're starting to see the pathways that people need to start choosing for themselves. There's a large number of people who have lost their jobs and have sought job seeker. But this job keeper payment, it's going to send people down two different pathways. Do you want to kind of express what you think the delineation is?
Yeah, well, they're pretty. You can't do both. You're right. There's two options. You're either unemployed, in which case you go to Centrelink, or you are still employed, in which case you get paid money through your employer. Where it gets complicated is the sole trader. The sole trader has to sort of decide which one they would go for. In most cases, the sole trader, if they can, would go with the job keeper because it's more money.
That would be the smart for sure.
It's more money, and it doesn't come with all of the other stuff that, like, you don't need to look for work, you don't need to keep the job search diary and register with Centrelink and all of that. So it's a lot. It's and it sort of it's designed so that when we all, as a society, as a world, come out of this out the other end, things are relatively intact. So rather than having 1 million plus people become unemployed and then everybody try and find another job again, this way people keep their relationships with their employers and can hopefully pick up where they left off when things start picking up.
I guess the simple way for a sole trader, freelance musician or crew worker to understand it would be that your business still exists, you just don't have any work at the moment. It's like you're a plumber with no burst pipes to fix at this point in time. So
exactly.
So going from there, there are some requirements to prove the 30% drop in income, which you spoke about just before. So that can be proved via profit and loss statements. Do you have any advice for people listening as to what they can get started with? We understand it's not clear just yet exactly what kind of proof, but it does look like there's less in the way of paperwork to be done with the job keeper than there was with job seeker. So what can you recommend to people to get started on right now to get themselves prepared for the application?
Well, getting your personal books up to date is a definite, because like you say, there's going to be a requirement to show. We're not sure exactly how that's going to be. There's going to be a requirement for you to have to show the bank, the government that you're.
Well, they are at the moment, aren't they?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And that may be in the form of bank statements. So bank statements would be one thing I'd be recommending people start getting together. If you've got your receipts and your bookkeeping in general, I'd get it all together and start putting it into a spreadsheet or however it is that you collate and record all that information into accounting package or whatever. But given that this sounds like it's going to be focused on income, bank statements would be the main one I would be looking at for a sole trader.
Okay, great.
If anyone is registered for GST, or then your BAS statements also, which is the business activity statements, which you'd be lodging quarterly or monthly or annually.
Okay, and so in terms of, they've said that they would be starting payments on May 1st. This payment will be made through the ATO. Do you have a sense of what it might mean for people's tax burden? This is a taxable income as well, but is there any sense at White Sky around what the ATO's motivations might be in the future around this payment, or do we think that's just administration?
Not sure what you mean. Why is it strange that it's coming through on that's claimable income.
Well, maybe that's something you can explain to me a bit better.
Yeah, yeah. Well, no, I think it makes it's not really clear what this is going to be treated as. If it's claimable income, then it makes sense, because it's supposed to be replacing your existing income, or the income you would have otherwise made in that period. So it's a complete, replacement. If it was not taxable, then people who had worked for 7 or 8 months of the year earning X amount of money would then suddenly drop down into a different tax bracket and pay no tax on that money that they'd earned before the virus crisis hit.
Yeah, okay, right. That does make it clear. So in terms of the job seeker and the job keeper, I'm guessing there's a lot of people who would qualify for job keeper who have already gone through the process with job seeker. Would your advice be to go with the one that applies to them more, if that is job keeper, to jump on board with that? Or
at the moment, what we're telling our clients is to register for both, because most of the people who have registered for job seeker last week, they still haven't finished the process. They're still they're still collecting paperwork. They're still waiting for the callbacks to find out the status. So register for both, and then and just see how see how it all falls. I mean, it's pretty obvious to a lot of people who which category they fall into. But if you're one of those people, probably a sole trader, and you're not completely sure, I'd register with both. But like I said earlier, this new one, this job keeper, seems like the way to go.
Okay, and in this time, I mean, people have got time on their hands. Not everyone's great at books. Do you think when preparing this information that they should have a crack at themselves and do a profit and loss and all that kind of thing? Or do you think it's the kind of thing they should go to a professional for?
You could probably, I think having a crack yourself is definitely worthwhile. It's not rocket science. It's really just a matter of adding up all of your costs and all of your income. Most accountants can definitely give you a hand with that, or at least have a crack at it. Come back to us, because it's going to cost you your money that you don't have if you go to an accounting firm and say, if people coming to us and saying we've got all this backdated bookkeeping we need done, we're flat out busy, working on a client. So it's like whether we're not going to be able to get to it. I'd say just have a crack yourself. It's not that hard. Like I said, get the bank statement is the main thing. Have a look at how much income you've made at each month over the last 12 months, and see how it's differing from now. And that's your first point of evidence. We'll know more by the end of the week about exactly what requirements they need. But for a sole trader, there's not much more that you can offer.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a pretty amazing package. So our wellbeing helpline at Support Act, which is contactable by 1-800-959-500. It's a 24/7 wellbeing helpline, and there are financial counsellors available to talk to you through that helpline. I'd like to thank you for joining us today, Tom. That was really informative. Hopefully people get a lot out of it. We'll be putting some more resources in the comments section and on the Support Act website. Maybe I'll hit you up for some of that stuff, Tom.
No problem at all.
Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you
tomorrow. Cheers, mate.